Well, I know our texts were long, but there's a reason I wanted to share those stories, and so hopefully we will be able to understand better with that soon. But first, I want to just share with you a little exchange that I had with my cousin a few weeks ago. She texted me and sent me a video, which we'll see a little bit of. And here you see she said, show this to John, because he has on his bucket list to do this very same thing. And she was trying to encourage me to do it too. She says, makes you want to go, right? And she went skydiving. And because I have vertigo, I was like, not even going to happen. But she really wanted to share with me how great it was. So we're going to take just a quick glance here and see what it was that she experienced.
Megan and Rebecca, or Rebecca and Megan, depending on which way you're looking. You guys, you match.
We do.
Was this planned?
Not.
Well, it looks pretty good to me. So anyway, you're all geared up, ready to go on a skydive. We'll see how close we can get these, all right?
All right.
And so we're going to climb up in the plane. We got a couple friends up there right now, and they're going to jump out from 10,000 feet and free fall for quite a while at 120 miles an hour. Does that sound great?
Sounds perfect.
Are you sure?
Absolutely.
All right, let's do it.
Megan, my cousin, is the taller one. That one. Megan, the taller one, right? Don't know if you caught that. She's nothing she should say. She's watching her friend. She's watching her friend go first. Can you turn up just a little bit, Pen? Okay, so yeah, that's pretty terrifying, is it not? I think most of us might feel this way, right? This is your brain, this is you not using it. It makes me think, one of our aunts likes to, when, I just remember it happening in a car one time when we were passing, and it's kind of, you see a car coming, she would go, death, 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 and so that's what comes in my mind, is death, death. It's a rather scary thing to think of throwing yourself out of a perfectly good airplane. And yet she chose to do it. She went ahead and faced that fear. And when I was in high school, our youth group did several different types of adventure things. We would do whitewater rafting. And I remember that when we went, our raft, there were 12 of us in it, and I was in the back, and it kind of folded as it went over the falls that we went on, and I ended up in the front between my youth pastor and his wife because I was airborne as we went over the falls and the way it went. And doing those kinds of things are fun because there's a bit of security in it. I mean, she knew she had that parachute. Yes, there was, you wouldn't jump out of a plane if you didn't have that, at least, right? It's still scary, but we have security in knowing that there are safety measures. Just like being on a roller coaster, you have that bar in place to hold on to you, even though it's terrifying and you might go upside down and around and whatever. You know that you will be safe despite all the fears that are quite logical and rational, right? Real, genuine fears. We're scared yet secure. And I will not ever go skydiving because I promised my mom, about that time when I was in high school doing all those things, she had a nightmare that I died doing it with a youth group or something like that, with a church group, and she asked me to promise her not to. So that's not on my bucket list. But if John wants to go, all power to him. Well, our first story today was about Gideon, and I consider him the jaundiced judge. There were all these judges, and some of them were just totally like, all right, I got a knife and I'm going to spear somebody. I'm going to, they were just all out there. But he was kind of yellow-bellied, a little scared, afraid of facing things. He's known for that. He's the one who put out a fleece, not just once but twice, to say, God, if this is what you're really going to do, if you're going to give me victory, make the fleece stay wet and the ground dry, or the ground be wet and the fleece dry. And God did it. But it was legitimate. I mean, in our passage we saw that the enemy that he was facing, there were so many of them, it was like grains of sand, and even the camels couldn't be counted because there were so many. I mean, this was a huge, huge army that they were facing. And then God said, okay, you've got 32,000, that's too many. If you guys try and fight them with 32,000, you'll think maybe you did it. So send the scared ones home. And then it was down to 10,000. He's like, I think we can still go more. Chiseled it away, all the way down to 300 men. That's a very terrifying situation, I would think. 300 people against the sea of army that's going on. But yet Gideon had courage in that situation, and he faced that. There's only one thing I think that might be more terrifying than those kind of numbers of 300 to countless infinity, and that is parenthood. Can you put the next slide on? You guys know this scene from Jurassic World where he's trying to hold off the raptors? Can you click again? Chris Pratt also managed to go out and put that scene with a bunch of kids too, because it can be pretty daunting to be in charge of another human being who's completely helpless 24/7. But in our next story with Zechariah and Mary, they were both getting back-to-back birth announcements. These relatives, these cousins, one finding out first and then the other. And in both cases, this was an unplanned pregnancy, and they were not prepared, even though it wasn't that it was unwanted. Especially with Zechariah and Elizabeth, it was dearly wanted, but they had long since given up hope. And with Mary, she was planning to get married, so having a family soon was not like out of the question. But just kind of timing was a little off. But to me, it was a pretty sweet deal because, first of all, they had a positive pregnancy test. They knew for sure. It was definitely determined, yes, you are pregnant. Second of all, the gender revealed. They both knew they were having boys. No question there. And third of all, the name was already decided for them. They were told what to name the children. Wow, that's pretty sweet. But the response that they each had to the situation is a little interesting. And I think that's kind of why Luke put it the way that he did, because we see pretty much the same kind of thing happen. An angel comes, tells them not to worry, and tells what's going to happen. But Zechariah's first response is, how can I be so sure? He questions. He doesn't question how it's going to happen. I mean, yes, they're old or whatever, but he says, how can I be sure that what you're saying is really going to happen? And I'm thinking, you're in the temple and there's an angel coming to you. That's pretty big deal. Hopefully you can trust that. But then Mary's response is very different. It says, so sure, but how? Whereas his is a question of whether or not it's going to happen. Hers is more like a response of, but science. I'm pregnant. I mean, I'm a virgin. This shouldn't be able to happen. She doesn't question that it'll happen, but just how, out of curiosity. Like, okay, so I just don't see how that's going to be. But she still trusts and accepts and embraces what's going to be happening to her. So how would you respond? Say someone came to you and asked you to do something or challenged you to do something that was difficult. I mean, I'm not saying run for president, although you probably would have a lot of followers at this point, or even governor. We could use some better options. But say our just request right now to ask you to be in a life group, to open up just to another person or two. It can be a little scary sometimes to share what's really going on, but hopefully over time of being with someone, we can get used to getting over the fear of rejection and realize that they're going to accept us and that they have similar things going on too. But the different options that we might have to responding to a request might be, first of all, heck no, which is pretty much what Jonah did. And we can see how that worked out for him. So I would recommend not just do a heck no, but the next option we have might be, well, yes, no, maybe, I don't know. And in James, James spoke a little bit to this, and he said that anyone who doubts is like a wave in the sea, blown up and down by the wind. Such doubters are thinking two different things at the same time, and they cannot decide about anything that they do. They should not think they will receive anything from the Lord. Basically, it would be as if Megan up in that plane had 1 foot in and 1 foot out. And nothing's really going to happen that way. And it's not going to be very safe either. But you don't move anywhere when you're trying to think two things at the same time. This happened again in another passage of scripture. I love all the different stories and trying to find connections and similarities, so I walk around through the scriptures a lot. But in Mark 9, it was a story of a demon-possessed boy whose dad had brought him to the disciples to try and free him from the demons, and it hadn't worked. So the followers brought him to Jesus, and as soon as the evil spirit saw Jesus, it made the boy lose control of himself, and he fell down and rolled on the ground, foaming at the mouth. Jesus asked the boy's father, "How long has this been happening?" And the father answered, "Since he was very young. The spirit often throws him into a fire or water to kill him. If you can do anything for him, please have pity on us and help us." Jesus said to the father, "You said, 'if you can.' All things are possible for the one who believes." Immediately the father cried out, "I do believe. Help me to believe more." It's okay to be uncertain. There's reason that he doubted. He had already taken this, he'd had this boy struggling for years and years, and he brought him to the disciples, and the disciples tried really hard. They were praying and trying to cast out demons, and they had done that in other situations, so it seemed like it should be something that could have happened, but it didn't. So when he came to Jesus, there was a bit of understanding for his hesitation, his fear, but even so, Jesus kind of challenged him in that and said, "If I can do this, I can," and pretty much gave him the affirmation that he would, in what he was saying, that if you believe, I'll do this. And so the father's response, I've always loved this. I heard this, I remember someone preaching on it in chapel when I was in college. "Lord, I believe, help my unbelief," or "help me to believe more." It's okay to acknowledge our fears, our doubts, our hesitancies, but we cry out to Jesus and ask him to help us with that, and he will. He will give us the extra courage that we need. Cling to the faith that you have and and ask for the more that you need. It's okay to be uncertain, but if we know that God has said it, I don't think he's very patient with that. Kind of like when our kids ask for something and you said they're going to get it and they keep asking anyway. It gets a little annoying. It can be like, I told you we're going to do this, just later, hold on. I did say it, trust me, I did say it. Like I said before, Zechariah didn't ask how, but if this was going to happen. So he didn't quite trust. But Mary, she was just curious. And Gideon, the yellow-bellied one, he was twice with the fleece, and that was after this whole scene that we read about with him in the armies was after he'd already been through the fleece situation and seen God work and seen God respond and answer. But God was not impatient with him about it. He didn't, condemn him about whatever fear and hesitancy he had. He actually initiated the proofs. It was God who told him to put the fleece out, to give him that confidence. It was God who told him to go down and listen to the other army as they had their dream thing and said, "I will do this so that you will be confident." And his response then was to be all in. He was all in and went after because he knew that God was going to act. And when I think of that scene of just these 300 guys coming with screaming, it makes me think of the movie Divergent, which I don't know if any of you have seen, but there's these different factions based on different personality types, and one of them is called Dauntless. They are the wild, crazy defenders, the people who are bold, courageous, and defend everyone. And I have in my head, I couldn't find it, although I tried to find it online, just this scene where they are coming in and they are on the L in Chicago, but the L doesn't stop, and they just run and jump off the train, and they're just climbing things, and it's just crazy, wild, screaming, hooting, hollering, but these are the tough guys. And that's the scene that I see in my head thinking of that battle a little bit. But that's why I'm thinking of the word daunt with our message today. That it's a verb that means to overcome with fear or to intimidate, to lessen the courage of or dishearten. So these people in the movie, they're the ones who they are supposedly not afraid. And I think it's not so much that they're not afraid, it's that they don't let that fear overcome them. They don't let it lessen their courage, and they aren't disheartened by facing that fear. it's totally understandable to be afraid. There's genuine risks involved in a lot of different situations, whether it be vulnerability, whether it be physical risks, whether it be reputation, lots of different things that we face in different situations that we're called to. But it's also good and right to recognize and name those fears. Just don't leave them there. We line them up next to what God says and who God is, who he's revealed himself to us to be. And then we can ask him for help. That's what we've seen the example of. And that's what the demon-possessed boy's dad did. He asked for help. He said, Lord, help me in my unbelief. But we also get that command again in James, where James was talking about the doubters. Just before that, he says, can you put the next verse? Is it there? James 1:5. If any of you need wisdom, if any of you need some kind of certainty, you should ask God for it. He's generous to everyone and will give you wisdom without criticizing you. He wants you to have that confidence. He showed that to Gideon, and he shows that to us in these verses here. And he does give. He has given that in 2 Timothy we read that God has not given us a spirit that makes us afraid again, but of power, of love, and self-discipline. Because there is no fear in love, but love casts out all fear. That's from 1 John. So don't let fear steal your courage. John 16:33 says, take heart. I have overcome the world. So be brave. There's different versions of it. So there's an author that I really like right now, someone who I've been able to go hear speak. Her name is Glennon Doyle Melton, and she calls herself a truth teller. She just tells her story like it is and is there to encourage others. But she likes to say that we can do hard things. And so that's what I would encourage you. We can do hard things. So if you could just show the kind of the wrap up of what Megan's experience was. He says he doesn't get bored. She was asking. He says he doesn't get bored of doing that. Wow. I guess if it's that life-threatening, it might be exhilarating every time.
Hi.
We're back on the ground. How was that?
That was amazing.
Fun stuff, huh?
Yes, loved it.
What was your favorite part? You like the best?
As a volunteer, I don't know what to do.
Yeah, cool.
I'm mental jump happens.
So what do you think when you do it again?
Absolutely.
Thanks for
Thank
jumping.
you.
Thanks for coming to Sky High Windy City.
So again, I'm going to leave you with, in this world you will have trouble. There will be challenges, but be brave. Christ, God, has defeated the world.